Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the FPL podcast by Fantasy Football Hub, our final episode of the 1920 season as we look ahead to Gameweek 38, with all games kicking off at 4 p.m. on Sunday, one of the highlights of the football calendar. Glory, despair, mini leagues won and lost, bragging rights, best ranks ever, worst ranks ever. By 6 p.m. on Sunday, there will be laughter and tears and every emotion in between. Welcome to FPL. My name is Andrew and I'm joined as usual by two of the best FPL managers in the game. Firstly, Andy Green. How is your game week going so far, Andy?
It's okay actually. We'll see what happens. I've gone for a Salah captain, so we'll see what happens on that note. That'll be the deciding factor, I think.
On Wednesday, good stuff. And we also have Adam Hopcroft. Adam, are Villa doomed or have they got a chance?
I think things are going their way. So we've got. I think the Bournemouth result was very pleasing. We actually went above Bournemouth without even playing.
Yeah.
I think Watford sacking Pearson. Hopefully, rotate too much. If they thrash Watford and we can get something against Arsenal, I think I'd fancy us to have a decent chance of staying up. Big if so.
Yes, well, I hope so for your sake, Adam. So as we look forward to Game Week 38 plus, strategy and long-term thinking goes out the window. It's a 1 week shootout to get the best players in you can, with some people still shrewd enough to have saved their free hit or triple captain chips. With this in mind, the three of us have drawn up the best Game Week 38 plus teams we can muster, which should help everyone make decisions on their transfer dilemmas of which players to bring in to help for that final push up the rankings. We'll also talk through the best captain options, which is wide open, with all the usual protagonists having strong arguments for your armband. As usual, to finish, we will answer your questions. For our YouTube watchers, if you haven't subscribed to us yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen to ensure you don't miss anything. Also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. So firstly, before we dive into our teams that we have picked for this Game Week 38, Andy, looking at the fixtures we've got for Game Week 38 plus, which are the ones that stand out to you and which are the teams that we're going to be targeting, do you think?
Well, I think the one that stands out to me and many is obviously the Man City Norwich game. But the way I think about Man City these days is even if they weren't playing a team like Norwich, who are kind of dead, done, and relegated, not playing very well anyway, I still think I'd be picking or looking to pick three Man City players against, whether they're playing Everton, Palace, Watford, Brighton, just that the way the team is playing, I just think it's just, any Man City fixture is a standout one. I think Man United as well. Leicester looked very flat against Spurs and, kind of just out of energy, out of ideas. So that's another one that I would be looking to target, or I am looking to target, I guess. The Villa West Ham one's very interesting. I nearly went for Grealish in my kind of dream free hit team, and I think a lot of people might be staying away from him, but he's got that kind of ability and drive to really perform in the last game of the season. And the other one is that doesn't necessarily stand out because they're a bit hot or cold right now is Spurs Palace. I just think Spurs can, as they've done for many years, either look absolutely amazing or absolutely terrible and flat.
On Game Week 38, I saw a stat earlier. Spurs' 5 last Game Week 38 have yielded a minimum of 4 goals. So that's quite interesting going into that one. Adam, what are your thoughts generally on the fixtures for the final game week?
I think there'll be goals, that's for certain. I think a lot of the premium strikers seem to have good fixtures. Kane, Aubameyang, Jesus. So I think there's some good fixtures. I think looking at it, looking at selecting a couple of the games, I think Man City v Norwich, a couple of things to think about here is who will play for Man City. We won't know. Hopefully we'll get early team news. Could players come off early? It's Norwich's last game in the league. They're going to want to give a good account of themselves. We saw City in the last 2 games have actually struggled. I thought they struggled against Bournemouth and they struggled against Arsenal. So I'm not as sold on City as you guys are. I think they are. They could score well, but then it's just going back to the same old predicament: who is going to get the haul for them? So knowing the starting 11 will be key. I think United. are in a really strong position. I think that, having watched Leicester versus Spurs yesterday, they got caught on the counter 3 times. They tend to, when I've watched them, play a fairly high line. Perfect for Martial, perfect for Rashford, perfect for Fernando. So I think United I actually don't think that's a tough fixture with the likes of Wes Morgan and Ryan Bennett. I'm not certain. It's a makeshift defence. I'm not certain that's a tough fixture for United. I think they could do well. I think, looking at some of the others, I think Liverpool versus Newcastle, I think they'll fancy themselves there, and either Salah or Mane could do well. So I think there will definitely be goals. And I'm just jealous of everybody that currently has a free hit, as I don't. So I'm just hoping that the Man United triple up that I have and the Man City assets that I have are going to do well.
I'm jealous, but I'm also not, because I know if I had my free hit, I just wouldn't be sleeping, because it's so rare that you look, as you've mentioned, Adam, that all the premium players not far off in the whole game have got really good fixtures, right? So every expensive asset has got a good fixture. So it's not easy, and the key is to probably finding the couple of players that can actually enable you to have all those, because you can't have everyone. So looking at them, the only other ones which you haven't mentioned yet, so obviously Burnley are going for the Golden Glove, and Chris Wood in his post-match interview yesterday said that they'll be doing all they can to make sure that Nick Pope wins the Golden Glove, gets his 16th clean sheet. So not really expecting much from that game between Burnley and Brighton. Neither teams score that many anyway. And as you mentioned with Leicester, I agree with you, Adam. So Spurs absolutely highlighted that in the first half yesterday. They put that really inexperienced defence to the sword, and I imagine United would do the same as well. So so let's move on then to Andy's actual dream free hit team. And Andy, for our podcast listeners, could you first read out the team and then run through your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the kind of overall balance is heavy front 7 or 8, I guess, if you like. So therefore, I've kind of had to budget at the back. So although I think Liverpool, are going to do very well defensively against Newcastle, a depleted Newcastle, I think I'm expecting goals, as Adam said as well, and so therefore I've kind of spent the funds up top. More exciting as well, I guess. But anyway, so that's led me to McCarthy, because I think Southampton have looked very solid defensively, and again Sheffield United failed to score tonight. Or failing to score so far. I think Southampton might be a good shout for a clean sheet here. So I've got McCarthy, Aurier in defence. I think I kind of look at him as like a kind of Trent style, attacking wing back, almost like a winger. And then I've got Doherty as well still in there. I think he's been ever present since I brought him in.
Yeah.
I just think that against Chelsea again, potentially not even a clean sheet. I'm just targeting a kind of attacking return there. Although what I have noticed with him recently is that when either Traore or Podence play, he just seems a bit more limited. If you look at some of his heat maps, he's just definitely not kind of, getting in the box. So that's very much a fixture dependent one, team dependent one, because if they're playing Traore there, I might be looking to kind of take Doherty out there. But let's just go with it. So it would be Bertrand, Aurier and Doherty there. I've also got the option of Peters to come on. Obviously, Burnley's defence looks pretty solid, and he got the assist last time.
So just to confirm, you're doubling up on Southampton defence
for the moment.
And not playing a Burnley defender.
Yes.
Interesting. What's the thought process? I don't get it.
I just think Brighton actually, although listen, Burnley's defence has been solid as a rock. I just prefer a defensive asset for Southampton basis their opposition, because I think Brighton have actually pretty good going forward. Trossard, Maupay, and Gross played tonight as well, so he's obviously quite creative. So yeah, it's really more an opposition pick, that one. So I'm picking the fact that I think Brighton have got a higher chance of scoring than Sheffield United. So in hunts for clean sheets rather than attacking returns, I've gone for the double up on Southampton defence. Moving on to the more exciting options, the midfield is packed. And again, obviously, if we get the team news on Man City or those lucky people with free hits, I'd be looking at Sterling, Mahrez and David Silva as my middle three for Man City. I did have Foden in there, but obviously with extra budget allowed from the free hit, then it enables David Silva, as we said. I think we said a couple of podcasts ago he's going to perform. None of us brought him in again. And, I think he will certainly be involved in everything, play 90 minutes. I know that they've potentially offered him another extension to his contract, but I think this is very much his last game in Swan Song season. So I like that pick. Mahrez, I think, is going to be a key pick next season as well. I think he's just so creative. His points per minute is insane for Man City. And then Sterling as well to finish it off. Obviously, he's been on great form. I do think, Pep's comments earlier today suggest that he is going to give the whole team minutes. Now, whether that's over the next 2 games or simply he's just going to, use his 5 subs and bring on as many players as he can is up for debate. And then my other 2 midfield spots are Bruno and Martial. I mean, I don't really think I need to kind of discuss why I'm picking them. They're on fire. They're playing a depleted Leicester defence who just, succumbed 3 goals to Spurs. So, I think those 2 picks kind of speak for themselves. And then up front, I've gone for Rashford. I don't really think I need to kind of explain the merits of a Rashford pick against the Leicester backline as it is currently. And Harry Kane. So it was a bit of a toss-up between Kane and Aubameyang. Clearly, obviously, both have the attributes of short-term form and both on penalties. But I just watched Harry Kane last night, and he's a counter-attack, or Spurs are still a counter-attack team, and that may be up for some debate, but he really looked like he was up with the pace of anyone running down the wing. Finishing, I haven't looked at his actually, let's take a look at his XG. So his XG was 0.66 for that game. So actually, he's significantly outperforming his XG there with his 2 goals. But yeah, he had 4 shots, 3 in the box. He just looks like the deadly finisher that we all remember. But equally, with Kane, he can just disappear. So I think, in that sense, fixtures aside, Aubameyang's probably the slightly safer pick, just because he seems more consistent to me. But I just like that Kane pick, and that he's got that kind of brace in his back pocket from last game. Sorry, my third striker will be Nketiah, who I don't expect to play 90 minutes, but in the event of a last-minute injury or a phantom all-out attack chip, then in theory I could play him. But yeah, so that'll be the formation will be 3-5-2, heavy in midfield and heavy on City. So hoping that City, well, this isn't really my free hit, but if I did have it, I would hope that City, can actually, in the minutes they play, they can perform. I fully expect David Silva to get 90 minutes and the other 2 to get at least 65, 70.
I think it's really, really good. I just think you're balmy with no Burnley. So they've just had a 0-0 with Newcastle. And Newcastle have got 8 defenders out, and they've just drawn 0-0. Brighton don't score many goals. I think that'll be my only change, is either hope for McCarthy or play Peters instead of Bertrand. But this kind of the hero there. But
yeah,
sure. I hate your team as well, because it's fairly similar setup to my current team. So particularly that midfield. So I actually really hope that does well. And I like the fact you're sticking with 3 United. I think there's obviously loads and loads of options this week. I think Kane over Aubameyang's an interesting one. You use the word counter attack, and the big observation that I've made since the lockdown's been over is that a lot of Kane's goals are coming from counter-attacks, and he looks sharp, fit, and to be fair to him, he looks faster than I've seen him in a while, because he's actually really keeping up with plays. His header against Newcastle, I mean, I don't know how many yards he covered, but it was exceptional. And you think about the goal that he scored against West Ham. So he looks sharp, and he looks back to his best. My concern is Mourinho's style of play. Will Palace let them counter-attack like that? Don't really think they let United do that. I think United's goals come from really good, intricate playing around the box. Spurs don't really have that in their locker. They haven't really. I mean, maybe next season if he works with them more. But it's the counter attacks they're brilliant on, and actually, I do think Mourinho sort of got something. Particularly the goals they scored yesterday were absolutely brilliant. So I do think Mourinho is starting to cave his identity, but carve his identity, but I just feel Palace, that they're not going to allow the counter attacks. That said, Kane is capable of scoring against anybody, because his goal, he scored the second goal, the one which was reminiscent of Arsenal curling it. He's got that finish in his locker. He's got the so. But I think Aubameyang, for me, I would definitely go Aubameyang over Kane. I mean, watching the City game a weekend, he was phenomenal. I mean, that first finish, to have the confidence to do that, the outside of your right foot, having just missed a one-on-one. What a player! And I think the second goal was just brilliant as well. The speed to get away. Nobody got even close to him, but how he just cut him was fantastic. So I'd definitely go Aubameyang. He's obviously in the Golden Boot race as well, which he scores against Villa. Hopefully he won't, but he could be going into the Watford game as a leading contender.
Is there a slight risk that he's rested for the FA Cup final or not?
Nah, not a chance. I think with being a week until the final, surely if he's going to rest players, it'll be against Villa.
Yeah.
You would want to have the momentum going into the final, and I just cannot see. I mean, I think Aubameyang, I know I said I thought he'd be rested, but I think he was rested against Liverpool, wasn't he? So I think he'll start against Villa, and I think he'll start against Watford. But he looks sharp. I mean, that performance against City was absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so with that, then we move on to Adam's team. So, Adam, for our podcast listeners, could you run through your free hit Gameweek 38 team and give us your thoughts?
So, I've gone with Martinez in goal, a back three of Robertson, Peters, and Long. Then I've got Salah, David Silva, Martial, and Antonio. And then I'm going heavy up top with Kane, Jesus, and Aubameyang. So, a couple of things to go for. I think Arsenal probably will keep a clean sheet, and Martinez has been brilliant. I mean, I've spoken to a few people. I think people still favour Leno to get back in. I think he's slightly, but that said, he's so assuring in watching him. He looks so confident. His handling is excellent, and he's good for a save point or two. We've got 4 points for Liverpool. Just brilliant. So he's in my team. I had him set and forget, and it was a very, it's one of the decisions that I'm happy with. So I'm going to stick loyal to Martinez. I've gone double Burnley for the reasons you mentioned. They want, it's going to mean so much to get Pope the Golden Glove, and I think for a team like Burnley, they don't necessarily get Golden Boots, Golden Gloves. So I think they'll be all out for them, and I think they might. I think it will be sort of a team thing that they'll all celebrate if they do get it for him. Because I think it has been a team effort. But I also think Pope deserves it based on, if you look at the XGC over the season, he has actually saved them quite a lot of points. So I've gone double Burnley, the two budget options, Peters and Long. I've gone Robertson over Trent. He's been brilliant since the restart. Looks more attacking, more threatening, and I think he's got a good chance of attacking returns as well as keeping a clean sheet. Newcastle, I don't think, can offer much threat, even with Liverpool half focused.
He's been on some corners as well, which he hasn't been.
Yeah, he has.
He's been on corners and free kicks and things. So I think not only does that obviously really heighten his appeal, but it dents Trent's a bit as well, because he's taken half the amount of corners he was. And I think Robertson next season is probably even one to look out for, even more than he was this year, I think.
I think next season it depends on the price. I think if they're the same price, I would go Trent without, but if there's, say, $1 million difference, which maybe they could be given the points differential, it will be a pretty tough decision because, like you said, Robertson has impressed. I think so I'm fairly happy with my defence. I don't think there are loads of standout options in defence this week as well, so I thought I'll go one premium and the rest fairly cheap. I've gone Salah, just he's so selfish, and if he's got a sniff of that Golden Boot, I think he could do quite well away to Newcastle. I haven't tripled up on Man City, and the only reason is that I think, given that we're picking this fairly early in the week, I haven't got a clue who's going to start. So I've picked the centre forward who's playing Norwich, because I think in the last few weeks the centre forward versus Norwich has done well. Antonio, Chris Wood, etc. And And I think I've gone for David Silva for the reasons that Andy mentioned. I can't really add anything to that. So I've gone for that. I think they're probably the two most sensible assets for me from Man City. I've then looked at, with Salah, Kane, Aubameyang, Martial and Antonio, I've looked for proper goal scorers for teams that I think they'll get a lot of chances. So I've mentioned Salah. Martial, away, counter-attack versus Leicester. I think he looks sharp at the moment. I prefer him at home, but he's got a bit of a competition with Rashford as well, and you can see he gets really annoyed and angry when he's taken off. So I think he's got that edge to him, and I've been really impressed with him. So I like Martial. Antonio, sadly, and this is me using my head at the moment, Villa are going to have to go and win that game. So I think there's going to be opportunities for Antonio, and I think also David Moyes, he's got no incentive to bring through youth or rest players. There's no incentive. He wants to make himself look good. So I think he'll play his best team and try and get a result against Villa. Hopefully I'm completely wrong and he puts out the under-10s. Just don't see it. And then I think up front, I've gone big up front. I think Kane, Jesus and Aubameyang, they've all got braces, hat-tricks in them. I still don't, my point I made about Kane earlier is still completely valid, but I think if I'm going to free hit, I want to do something completely different to my current squad. I'm set up as a sort of 3-5-2 at the moment, so I'm fairly happy with that team. Obviously, could do with the third City, but I think there's plenty of goals in there.
No third City, and maybe more surprisingly, no Bruno Fernandes. Yeah,
well, I think. I wanted to do I wanted to do something a little bit different because, and I think if you are free hitting, you should do that and go for your league. And I think Fernandes has looked good, but I just prefer Martial just from the eye test in the last couple of games. And I think the Palace game, he's still involved, Fernandes, but I think a lot of the thinking is I just want to throw all my funds into the strike force and just hope for goals. Yeah, it's and also as well, Fernandes does well. I'll be happy anyway because he's in my actual team. So spread it.
Would that change if you got the teams? If you knew exactly who was starting for City, would you then flip back to kind of? I know one of your drafts had, the three City players. Would you then think, right, these guys?
Yeah, good question. Possibly. I mean, it depends because, let's say Foden was starting. Could I put him in for Antonio? Possibly. Maybe Sterling in for Salah. But I think if I was free hitting, I'd be fairly happy with this team. In terms of my own team, though, because I'm not free hitting, the City lineup is key because I currently own Sterling and De Bruyne, and I think just going back to City, my big concern, but the reason I haven't gone 3 City, is just Pep's comments. I think he use the subs, he could take off people early. I think Norwich are just going to go and defend and just make sure they don't get embarrassed. And I think City might just see it as a stroll in the park exercise. Whereas I think looking at the others, Kane loves a goal. Aubameyang's going for the golden boot. Salah's going for the golden boot. It's David Silva's last game. Martial wants to outscore Rashford. And Antonio, I think he's enjoying and relishing playing in a striker roles. I think everybody in my team has got something to play for. There's going to have to be sacrifices. I just think with City, you could end up picking the wrong one. And, whereas the players in the other teams, it's a little bit easier to work out who's going to get the goals. That's my thought process at the moment anyway.
Okay, and finally, we move on to my team. So I've gone for Pope in goals with a cheap Kallenberg. Obviously, is the fodder there. Going for a back three of Peters and Bardsley. So I'm going for triple Burnley.
At the back. Should go triple Southampton. So much safer.
It's so much safer. So I'm going for triple Burnley. I did watch the Burnley and Norwich game on the weekend. It wasn't, it's not one of the highlights of the calendar, but I enjoyed it actually. And both Peters and Bardsley had a couple of shots each. Peters had a really good one, which was tipped over the bar, and he also had the assist. Bardsley were, a bit more of pot shots, but I don't really buy into this Tarkowski and Long thing. I think the data sets we look at when we think of scoring a header off a corner, isn't it something like 4% of corners are scored, and stuff like that. I just think that we look at data sets, or kind of FPL analysts look at data sets and they say that Tarkowski is going to score against Norwich last week. The odds on that happening, you're taking a large data set and applying it to one game. If you were applying it to a series of 5 or 6 games, I can maybe say, maybe he would score potentially a goal or even 2 in those 6 games. But for one game, I don't buy it. I'd rather have the players who are crossing the ball and taking shots. For me, they're far more likely to take shots.
I think it's a really good point what you said about one data set, and I think the Tarkowski thing, the probability of him getting an attack in return from a set piece was fairly low. Even, if, like you said, if you were doing it over a longer period, it makes sense. You've got more chance of catching a 15-pointer, but definitely not for just one match. You'd be incredibly lucky if it came off.
According to Twitter, he was going to be top of the goal scorers charts for that week. But if he'd have scored, it would obviously have looked like genius, right? But the odds are he wasn't going to score. Right, we'll move on from that. I've gone for Robertson. I've gone for him for a couple of reasons. One, because I do think he is as good a pick as Trent, but also I did have Trent, but he did save me, 0.8 million or whatever it was as well, which allowed me to make an upgrade further in my team. And then as placeholders, I've got just 4.1 defender, but I have gone for Brandon Williams, 3.8. Now, I didn't think about this when I was actually building the team. So he's the cheapest defender now in the game, which obviously releases budget elsewhere, but it does take up a Manchester United spot. So when I went to put in Williams, Martial, Bruno, and Rashford, obviously you can't have all three. So I had a decision to make there. So those who are free hitting, probably wise to remember that, because while Williams is a great enabler in terms of he's the cheapest player in the game, it does take up a United spot. So I'm going Pope, Peters, Bardsley, and Robertson. Then in midfield. So in terms of Man City, my thoughts with Man City are I'm just going to pick the best players who I think will score the most points. I just think you can really overthink it. If we get the team news early, it'll be different and I can tweak. But I've gone for De Bruyne. I've gone for David Silva. So I think they're the best pick, kind of regardless of who's playing and who's not. I think they're the best pick. Maybe Sterling over De Bruyne. However, I can't really afford him. But and I've gone for Martial and Bruno, or what we said already. I've got Guendouzi then as fodder for my 5th mid. And then I've copied Adam, got the all-out strike force then of Jesus, Aubameyang and Kane, just for the reasons you said. I think, they could all score a lot of goals on that final day. Looking at it, I've kind of gone all in a bit on 3 teams. I've got 3 Burnley, 3 Man City, Man United, and then I've just got like Aubameyang, Kane. So it is a bit all in on these teams, but I do fancy them. So no Salah, no Sterling, but I think that Jesus, Aubameyang, and Kane could make up for it. So that's how I'm looking.
Yeah, the only thing with the free hit. Listen, we know De Bruyne is the best, but certainly for me the best player in the league. Although Fernandes is kind of climbing that ladder and getting very close, but for me he's still the best player in the league, and he's on penalties for probably the most attacking team out there. Again, Man United are knocking on that door. When I've seen De Bruyne play with David Silva or maybe even Foden in that role, De Bruyne just tends to sit back. Now, as I said, of course he's on set pieces, particularly penalties obviously for FPL. That would be my concern, is that they're going to want David Silva right upfield. Maybe Foden comes on for the last 30 minutes. De Bruyne, for me, is going to sit in that deeper role. So that would be the only kind of concern I'd have with that team. And that's probably why, if you had the funds, I'd probably go for Sterling, assuming they're all starting.
Yeah, so I have got the option of moving Williams out and potentially either Aubameyang or Kane, and then bringing in Rashford, as a third striker, getting another cheap defender, and then upgrading De Bruyne to Sterling. So you've still got all these kind of options, but I think that the kind of general 7 or 8 there. I take your point with De Bruyne, but I think when you say playing deep, I'm not sure how deep you can play against Norwich, because it's just going to be camped outside. De Bruyne is going to be on their D basically the whole. They're just going to be passing it back and forth, like left to right, trying to give the ball David Silva One thing which is interesting, I'm not sure how this will play out. This is more of a feeling than anything else. But I do wonder whether if they do get a penalty, they'll give it to David Silva, which may actually dent De Bruyne's appeal even further. So that is something maybe to consider. I don't know if they would. I don't know if they would or not. I'd like to think they would, because there's nothing, there's nothing on the game, is there? But I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think if?
I think they would, and I think he'd backheel it into the net. No, I think he would. I think they would simply, especially if it's late on in the game.
Yeah,
we're assuming they're going to be 2 or 3-0 up by then, but yeah. I think they would give it to him.
I think they would. I think looking at your team, it's similar to mine. I think the big difference really is you've got Bruno and KDB, safe, boring options, and I've gone for Salah and Antonio. And so I don't think that
glamour options.
The glamour options, yeah, exactly. As if Salah's not really, it's a pretty template option. But I think I don't think there's that could go either way.
Yeah.
I like De Bruyne, but if I was free hitting, he wouldn't be in my team. I'd go for, if Mahrez, Jesus, and Sterling were starting, I would pick them over De Bruyne. Same with Silva. I just think that he'll be involved. He might get an assist. He might set up a couple of things, but I don't know if he'll. Like Andy said, I think he'll, just take more of a back seat. Let Silva get in the box. And obviously Sterling, Mahrez and Jesus are probably more likely to get in goal scoring positions. So obviously I've got De Bruyne, and I'm probably not going to get rid of him, given that I've not got a free hit. But yeah, I don't know if I'd have him in a free hit. But
someone asked me today actually for kind of ultimate differentials, because they've got a huge points gap and they've got a free hit. And the two that sprung to mind without even looking at any stats or anything were Grealish, simply because of the big game syndrome, playing West Ham as well, and Richarlison against, a couple of weeks ago we were talking about target Bournemouth, and Richarlison scored tonight, and they've got a home game last up against Bournemouth, so those might be two. Are there any other ones you guys can think about with regards to kind of
Yeah, just on the Grealish and Richarlison. Obviously, we're recording this on Monday, and I think tomorrow there are two huge games. Depending on how the Man City, Watford and the Villa Arsenal game goes, I think that really dictates what could happen on the final day. It's possible if Watford can get a draw tomorrow and Villa lose to Arsenal, Villa are relegated, as are Bournemouth. So that could take that completely out of the equation. That said, if Villa can get a point or even beat Arsenal and Watford get hammered, Villa are probably in pole position. And I think a Grealish shout would then be brilliant, because there will not be a single player, maybe David Silva, but there were. In fact, actually, I'd just probably take that back. I don't think there'll be a single player more motivated than Grealish. He wants to leave Villa, I think, but to leave keeping his club up, he will feel like he's accomplished something special. And I think it's, you could see how hurt he was the other day, particularly the second half against Everton. He was trying to do everything, he was trying to do everything. So I think Grealish could be a good shout, but I think Villa have to be in the driving seat in terms of staying up, which we obviously won't know until tomorrow.
Just as an aside on that, where do you think he goes? Because I was sure he was going to go to Man City, and now
I think he'll go Man City. Yeah, I think he'll go Man. I think he'll go Man City. I think in where I would see him play, I actually see him probably more as a midfielder than a winger personally. I think for Villa, we need him as far forward as possible, but I think he would be more of a natural replacement for David Silva than Foden is. He's so good on the ball. He sees a pass. He tends to make the right decisions. He's good at controlling the tempo of the game. He's got all of those things about him, which I think Pep really likes him. And I think he's mature enough at probably the right age for City to bring in. United, I'm not sure where he'd fit in United, to be honest. I don't think he would. I don't know where he'd play. I don't know, would him Fernandes and Pogba and Rashford be overkill? Probably.
I just think if you look at some of the way these teams are building their squads, like Chelsea signed Havertz today, you almost need that extra player to kind of rotate in and out. And I know Solskjaer hasn't done that recently, but it's strange that the press rumours we've seen recently about Grealish to Man United, I don't know where that's come from.
To Man City, you mean?
No, but more
right.
recently, Man United have been discussed in conjunction with them.
Yeah, well, I think Man United's been talked about for a while, and I think they obviously want him and Grealish and Sancho. But if I was advising Grealish, I genuinely think Man City would be a better fit for him. I think he'll learn more as well. I mean, to be coached by Pep, and work with the likes of De Bruyne, I think he'll learn more at City, and I think it'll be a better move for him. I think he'll advance as a player. I know United, it's an exciting project, but I just don't see where he would fit in the starting 11.
In terms of low-owned players, so I think we're in a bit of an unprecedented time, actually, that all, as I kind of mentioned earlier, all or most of the premium assets are all playing well, and they've all got nice fixtures as well. So in terms of, like, we were seeing pre-lockdown effective ownership of 160% on players, 170% of people like Salah, as an example. But I think that now has changed, and I think there are some low-owned players. If you think of players like Mane, you would never call him out as like a real differential when you compare him against other teams. I think Mane is a good option for anyone who's chasing. Jesus, I think, is still kind of low owned. So if he starts against Norwich, you couldn't ask for the more perfect form. As Adam alluded to earlier, he's not the best finisher, or at least he's not as good as Aguero, but he will get chances. And would you be really surprised if Man City beat Norwich 6 or 7-0 and Jesus gets a hat trick? Because I wouldn't. I think the only other player that I've been kind of impressed with recently, I am a Spurs fan, so maybe I have a slight bias, but I do think Lucas Moura has got a bit more to kind of offer. He got 2 assists yesterday. I've liked him ever since he joined Spurs. He does have the odd burst. He got that hat trick. He can be very explosive, and maybe it's more one for next year. But I do like Moura, and I think I think he's underrated. For kind of low. I don't think you need to hunt for low owned players, because I think there's enough of the big boys are low owned that they would actually give you a boost if you needed it.
I think Mane is a really good shot, and I was close to going with him over Salah in my team. And I think he looked really good against Arsenal. He looks sharp, and I think he's very, very low owned. And I think that's a sort of differential I would go for. Don't overthink it. Just go Mane over Salah. Yeah. They pretty much match each other anyway, and I think Mane's slightly better away. So I think he's the sort of differential I'd go for if you're after one.
And Silva, right? So David Silva is going to be a very low-owned player. I will very likely captain him, both from the thing that I think he could score the most points, but also a nostalgia pick. I'm not really in the running for my mini leagues this year, so nostalgia pick over the years. In the year, I did very, very well. I had him as a differential. I always got a bit of a sweet spot for him, and what a player he's been as well. So we will look then at captaincy then. So it's very interesting, because it's the first time this season where actually I put up the 4 options what I thought were the main options. I ended up putting up another 4, and I probably could have put up another 4. So the first 4 I put De Bruyne home to Norwich, Kane against Palace, Salah away to Newcastle, and Aubameyang at home to Watford. So Adam first, how would you think that poll ended? Who do you think came top of those 4?
Salah, I think.
And Andy, do you think?
Well, just looking at the ownership, because really there's a lot of people tend to, as I said, people tend to pick their own players. So I'd say De Bruyne.
Andy, you've pulled one back. You were 2-0 down on the poll statement. You pulled one back. So De Bruyne took 46% of the vote. Kane just took 14. Salah took 21, and Aubameyang took 18. I did put up another poll, and this was David Silva, obviously home to Norwich, Martial against Leicester, Bruno Fernandes against Leicester, and Jesus at home to Norwich. Andy first, how do you think that one finished up? David Silva, Martial, Fernandes, or Jesus?
It's going to be Fernandes.
Okay, and Adam?
No, it'll be Silva or Jesus. I will go with Jesus.
David Silva with 45.2% of that vote. Jesus was second with 35%. Fernandes only 10%, quite surprisingly, and Martial 9%. So they were 8 ones. I haven't even put Sterling in there, right? And there's probably some other ones like maybe Son and people like this, Mahrez, Rashford, you could easily have 11 or 12. It's absolutely wide open. Andy, what are your thoughts this week on the best captain? It's very, very
Well,
tough.
I mean, I think we're all slightly biased towards our own teams, and for me, if I get team news, I might be looking at Sterling because I brought him in last week. Salah's still tempting. I just think he's got everything. We don't need to go on about his attributes. I think he will be somewhat, basis we've just seen with those polls, he's going to be somewhat of a differential captain because I think, forget the free hit teams, a lot of teams will be going for their City assets. And then the remainder might be sticking on a Bruno or, a Martial or something. So I think the Liverpool lads, I know that Newcastle just kept a clean sheet tonight, but they are working with a makeshift defence there. So that could be an interesting one. Although I have to admit, Liverpool, I've watched most of the Liverpool games. They just don't really seem to be taking their chances. And I know Salah is notorious for that, not being as clinical as someone like Mane. So that's potentially the concern, But I do think they want to go out with a bang. And, obviously we've got that golden boot that we seem to be talking about for 5 players. So, I'm still looking at between Sterling and Salah, and I haven't really worked out a way to get David Silva in my team yet, despite talking about him for almost 3 weeks. So that'll be my decision. If I had David Silva, it'd be tempting. It's a very fun pick, I guess. And Mahrez is the other one who I don't have, but I would seriously consider for that City spot. He's very big points generator when he starts and he plays the majority of minutes. But I think Salah probably more secure of minutes than Sterling. Simply not just about the fact of the rotation that Pep's been doing, but Pep's actually come out and said, I will be splitting minutes amongst my team. So it's like Pep roulette on steroids basically, because we know that even these starters, with the exception of David Silva, are more than likely to be subbed.
So nailing your pants to the post, Andy. Who will be your best captain pick for this week?
Oh, the best one for kind of my team is probably slightly different, but I would say the best one for me would be if he starts, Sterling.
Okay. And Adam, what are your thoughts on the captaincy options this week?
So I think have fun with it. Look at what you want to achieve for the season, and if it's a mini league, take a gamble. I think there's somebody on this podcast that did that last year and ended up finishing 3rd by captaining Mane, if I'm correct. I think this is a bit of a lottery for me. I think there's loads of players that could score well, and I think this is the time to take a risk. Don't. I think there were so many good options this week. Look at who your rivals are. Go for someone different, and it's very difficult to say who will score the most. I think City have got great fixtures. I could see Salah hauling. I could see Aubameyang, Kane, Jesus, all of the players that we've mentioned. United doing fairly well away at Leicester. So I think take a gamble and play it tactically. I would go for a high ceiling player that your competitors don't own. I think any of the players I've mentioned have got high ceilings. For some reason,
You're going Danny Ings then.
I own Danny Ings, and I'm not going for Danny Ings. No, I think after he let me down with the penalty yesterday. I don't think. I think Ings at best will get 9 points. I can see there'll be a player I think that will get a hat trick on the last day of the season or close to, and I think the 3 people most likely for me would be Jesus, Aubameyang, or Salah. As Salah gets the most points for a goal, I'll go with him.
Good stuff. And what it's worth, I understand your point about risk. I don't even think it is much of a risk because I think there's really, no landslide captain this week. As we've seen in those polls, and we'll also, if we'd have put all 8 of those in the same poll, because obviously those 2 polls are split. If we'd have put them in the same poll, I don't think we'd have seen anyone above kind of 30% potentially. So it is massively massive. I think I'm going to go for David Silva And I think the best options that for me are Jesus. And I do like Martial. I think that goal he scored against Bournemouth, for me, was one of the most confident, well-taken goals I've seen this season. He broached on his left foot, struck it with his right in the top corner, didn't bat an eyelid. I don't tend to have much emotion or whatever else, but it was such a great finish. And I think he'll be incredibly annoyed that he was rested on the weekend as well. I think he'll be back for these two. And I think Martial next season is going to be the real deal. We will finish off with some questions we've had in from our followers on Twitter. So first one, this is from @Madman United fan. Do we target a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 formation? Thinking that Rashford is looking very fit and United have to secure fourth spot, Kane to do the job for the Europa League spot and Ings the Golden Boot, and then Salah in mid also chasing, but Liverpool might not care for the last game though. So 3-5-2 or 3-4-3. I know Adam and I were on 3-4-3. Adam favoured a 3-5-2. During this, discussion, have any of us kind of lent either way towards which would be the best one?
Free hit for me, definitely 3-4-3. I think the strikers of over the last couple of weeks seem to have picked it up. So I would go 3-4-3, and I suppose as per the free hit team.
Yeah.
That said, my team will be 3-5-2 because that's how I'm set up, unfortunately. Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking at all these players on the captaincy poll. I've only got about 2 of them. My actual team. Andy, what are your thoughts? Because you started off at 3-5-2.
Yeah, I just think there's so much power in midfield, both for this last game and next season. If the classifications stay the same, it's going to be very tricky to pick those 5 mids next season. And on a free hit, it'd be very tricky to pick the 5 mids. I mean, there's almost so many kind of out of position players there.
Yeah, there is.
So yeah, I just like the 3-5-2. And if you're on a free hit, you could probably double up on Aubameyang and Kane. That'd be a nice.
I do like a 3-5-2 only for the you've got the players like Martial and Bruno, and this is why I picked them over Rashford. I forgot to mention earlier, but they obviously get the extra point for the goal, the extra a point for a clean sheet as well, which is the only reason why I went for them over Rashford. But I think either or. I mean the kind of 5 or 6 of those 8 are going to, in essence, be strikers or forwards anyway, aren't they? So I don't think it kind of massively matters either your team has fallen. Really interesting question from @BuryItKermit. He says, apologies, this is pretty specific. I'm 40 points clear in a £500 cash league. I have free hit, my rival doesn't. Do I A, build the best free hit team for the week, or B, literally copy all 15 of his players? So we've probably been in this position in the past across the years. Honest Andy, what would you do first? You look like an honest bloke.
I would say, listen, if you don't care about anything else other than winning that, you've got to tactically, bear in mind this other chap's going to have 1 or 2 transfers, but you've got to base your team around his and then go for, 1 or 2 transfers that you think he's likely to make. I mean, if that's the only thing that matters, that's what you've got to do. You've got to play the sensible move.
£500 a lot of money. Adam, what would you do in that position?
I would look at the main players he owns and make sure I've covered them. So if he has Fernandes, but I would still then try and put in a few players that I think have got high upside. So I wouldn't completely copy him because 40 points is a lot to pull back, and he might there'll be 3 or 4 key players you'll have that you might keep. So you might not go as extreme on your free hit. But I think the fun in the game is about nailing that free hit, and so I wouldn't completely just copy his team because I think that's quite a safe, boring option. I think go put a few exciting players in there.
Well, he's asked the question, so I think the fact he's asked the question for me means that it's important to him. So I'm with Andy. I'm not saying I would copy it player for player, but I would probably cover 10 or 11, and where he's got really weak picks, because he's bound, if he hasn't got a free hit, he's probably got 3 or 4 weaker picks. I would probably just have the better ones. So have the Burnley defenders, have the Southampton defenders. But yeah, I mean, £500 a lot of money. If it was like £50 or £100, I would just say go out and get the best free hit. £500 is a lot of money, so I'd be tactical as well. So 2-1 there. The Andes have said to go for it. Adam's like, don't worry about it. Question from at FPL Quinton: Kane or Oba or both? So that's the first one. Really tough one. We have discussed the merits of them both. One word answer: if you had to pick one, Kane or Oba this weekend?
Oba.
Adam says Oba. Andy?
I think the Spurs bias again is probably going to lead me to pick Kane.
Okay, I think I would go for Oba, and it's only because Kane has just been he has the very odd inconsistent game. I think over the six or game we've been back, I think maybe 4 of them he's played really well, but the other 2 he just has been at the races. Remember that game against Everton the other week? That was just an awful game, wasn't it? He's also keen to hear thoughts on Salah versus Mane and Liverpool defence. I think we've touched on Liverpool defence. I think Adam and I would have Robertson in the team. Newcastle's team are decimated. Salah versus Mane, the eternal question. Andy first, Salah or Mane, if you were forced to pick.
This is probably, I think it's the most commonly discussed topic all season, isn't it? And we're still talking about it in the last game of the season. I think maybe next season we'll just all have both, and then there's nothing to talk about. I think, for me, the Salah penalty factor and greediness factor, and just the fact that he might even play through the middle at some point during this game. Firmino doesn't last 90 minutes normally. That's assuming even Firmino starts. So all kind of arrows point to Salah. Although I think over the course of the season, obviously Mane's probably been more dangerous, more direct.
Adam, Salah or Mane this weekend?
It depends, because we haven't seen the Chelsea game. If Salah is in genuine contention of the Golden Boot, Salah. If he isn't, and having watched, because I think eye test wise, I've been really impressed with Mane, and he's looked very creative as well. So the only reason I've gone with Salah this week is because of the Golden Boot factor. But if he doesn't score versus Chelsea, I think there's a big upside with Mane. Mane will knock you up the rankings higher than Salah will, and I think that's what people want for the last game. So I do think Mane could be a really exciting option. Plus, he just looks more assured with his finishing. I think if he gets a chance, you fancy him to score. Salah, and it might change versus Chelsea, but I think he snatched at a few and not looked quite as assured as Mane. So, but I do think if he scores versus Chelsea, then I would go with Salah.
I'm on Salah. I just think the only thing that Salah's really got above Mane personally is the penalties. I think that is it is a big thing. We've mentioned it before. You don't have to play well to score a penalty. And I think that, I expect Liverpool to give Newcastle a really good, attacking masterclass and have plenty of touch in the box. So that's the only reason I would go Salah or Mane. However, if I was behind chasing, a 20 or 30 point lead, so that chap's rival, for example, the one who's 40 points behind, if I was him, I'd captain Mane just to try, and catch up to Adam's point. Question from @QVig_FPL. So we've almost answered this. TAA or Robertson for free hit, Gameweek 38+. Money not an issue. So for me, it was a little bit money. I think that Trent has still got the advantage in terms that he takes direct free kicks. So I think that does give him, an advantage over Robertson. But it's the spare 0.8, which for me, I think tipped Robertson, as well as he's on a few more corners.
I'm considering having both for the last game week. So because there's a good chance I won't have Salah, I could bring Robertson in for Doherty and or whatever his name is, Matty D. So I think whoever you've got to stick with. If you're on a free hit, I probably prefer Robertson. I think he's looked past the eye test more, and I think stats wise he's done better than Trent in the last few. So I would go with Robertson, but I am considering both.
And Andy, Trent or Robertson, knowing how much of a Trent fan you are?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is the chance that he plays Nico Williams and then Trent moves up into that kind of midfield role, maybe as a kind of tester. So you may get some team use. Obviously, I prefer Trent over Robertson generally, but I can see if money's no object and they're both start, Trent for me.
Question from @Karen_G14. Thanks for all the pod, guys. I've not missed a single one, and you've done a great job. Thank you very much for that comment, Karen. 2 questions this week. Salah or Mane? We've answered that one. And number 2, need to downgrade one out of Rashford, Bruno, or Martial to get Salah or Mane. Which do you sell out of Rashford, Bruno, and Martial? So mine was Rashford. Just the only thing based. He's a bit more expensive than both of them, and the others get the extra points. Andy, what are your thoughts? Who would you downgrade?
Well, I would have said Rashford straight away. The only thing that's in my mind is that if they are on this kind of unusual penalty rotation, then it's Rashford up next, right? I believe.
Could be, yeah, because
But we don't know whether that's actually a thing. But
no,
it looked like it might be. So, but yeah, I mean, listen, you can't on Martial in his form, and Bruno is just on fire as well. So, although actually, really, to be fair, the last couple of games or the last game, he's looked a bit tired, but he definitely controls that game. He's involved in everything. So it has to be Rashford out of those 3, reluctantly.
And Adam, who would be the one you'd lose?
So it's really hard to split them, but I would go Rashford.
I would say the same. @MBison22, for those of us not on a free hit, which includes all us 3, by the way.
Yeah.
Which 2 high upside and non-template players would you bring in for 2 free transfers for 38? We discussed a few options. Adam, who are the 2 kind of 1 or 2 players who you thinking of getting in?
I think looking at Liverpool, we've talked about Robertson and Mane. I think both are good options, and I think they've both got high upside. I haven't got the ownerships in front of me, but David Silva we've mentioned as well. But I think he'll be in a lot of free hit teams. I think Mane's the one because it almost seems to me in the FPL community, every single person, they just talk about Salah and they see him as being so much better than Mane, but he isn't in reality. And we talk about penalties. When was the last time Salah had a penalty? I can't remember.
He's due.
Going back.
He's due.
It was but you say he's due, but
No,
I don't think. But I think one of the players to mention is Mahrez. I think there's been a lot of talk of Sterling. Yeah. I just think Mahrez, when I'm watching City, he's been a little bit unlucky. He was unlucky against Brighton. He was unlucky against Southampton. He's got a 15, 16 point haul. So I think the 2 that could be big differentiators would be Mahrez and Mane.
And Andy, who would be your 2?
I like the Mane shout. Liverpool are a class act, as we know, and I do like Richarlison. Scored tonight, and I think he's got a great fixture up against Bournemouth there.
I think the 2 I would pick are probably David Silva and Jesus. As for the things I mentioned earlier, I think they're both kind of lower shown compared to the template. They're both going to be the focal points for that Man City attack against Norwich. Okay, so that is it from us this week and for this season. So Andy, where can people get hold of you if they want to?
On Twitter at FPL Fantasy Guide.
And Adam, where can they get hold of you?
Twitter, Hopcroft13.
Okay, if you don't follow these guys on Twitter, you really, really should. And my Twitter handle is at Fergie222. So this video recording will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel with the podcast versions available in all major podcast libraries. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button and remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. It really does help us increase our rankings. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok are at FFH_HQ and our podcast Twitter handle is at FFH_podcast. So please follow and feel free to ask any questions. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk where you will find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, Opta stats, top player team reveals, and much, much more. If you fancy a free 7-day trial, either go on the link in the description, click on the link appearing now above my head, or go to the website and click on the bright red free trial button. We will be back for FPL Live on Gameweek 38 Plus at 3:45 p.m. on Sunday, giving FPL commentary of all 10 games as it happens. Please join us. It's great fun and it's going to be a crazy one for sure on Sunday. This is our final podcast of the 1920 season, but don't fear, as soon as the FPL game for 2021 is released, we will be back running through the fixtures and prices, ready for game week 1. We can't wait. We did record a lessons learned podcast during lockdown, which is well worth a watch or listen if you didn't the first time round. The link for this is in the description below, and it was also uploaded as a podcast too around about the 30th of April, so check your podcast libraries for that. Will also joined us for that one, so it was a brilliant watch and a brilliant listen. In the meantime, we hope you have a brilliant Game Week 38, a lovely summer break before we do it all again. It has been a pleasure. See you soon.